A luxurious mansion, a billionaire husband, and a terrible secret buried beneath it all. Deep in the basement, his pregnant wife is locked inside a steel cage while his glamorous mistress laughs, recording every second of her torment. They think no one will ever find out. But when that very video plays at his glittering gala, his shining empire collapses before the public's eyes, and the woman they tried to destroy steps out of the darkness to face them all. What follows is a story of power, betrayal, and justice, the kind that money can't hide. Stay till the end, because you won't believe what happens next. Tell us what time you're watching and where you're tuning in from, and let's dive into this story together. The marble floors of Hale Manor gleamed like mirrors beneath the chandelier light. Each reflection carried a kind of cold perfection, the kind that could only exist in a house built to hide something terrible. Clara Monroe had once believed those walls meant safety. Tonight, they meant confinement. The evening began with silence. It was the kind of silence that presses against the skin, heavier than sound itself. In the center of the basement, a cage stood. Steel bars, polished to a cruel shine, surrounded a single chair and a narrow bed. The air smelled of disinfectant and rust. Somewhere above, faint music drifted from the main hall, soft jazz for guests who would never know that beneath their feet, a pregnant woman sat in a cage. Clara pressed her hands against her belly. The baby moved faintly, a pulse of life she clung to. Her lips trembled, but she whispered only 2 words, "Stay strong." Her voice was almost lost in the hum of the air vent. She had learned not to cry anymore. Tears only made them laugh. A door opened at the top of the staircase. The echo of high heels followed, sharp and deliberate. Light spilled down the steps like a blade. Selina Voss appeared first, dressed in a deep crimson gown that shimmered with every movement. Her perfume arrived before her voice. "Well," Selina said, glancing at her reflection in the steel, "you look comfortable tonight." "No." Clara didn't answer. Her eyes followed the glass in Selina's hand. Red wine. It glowed like blood beneath the ceiling light. Selina stepped closer, her heels clicking with the rhythm of arrogance. "You know, Vincent says you were an artist once," she continued, swirling the wine. "I never see art down here, only pity." She tilted the glass forward. The red liquid splashed across Clara's pale blue maternity dress, staining it instantly. The cold soaked through the thin fabric, running down her stomach. Clara flinched, holding her breath. Selina smiled. "Oops." She turned toward the corner, where a small camera blinked with a steady red light. "Make sure you're recording this," she said sweetly. From behind her, heavy footsteps descended the stairs, the rhythm of power. Vincent Hale appeared in a white shirt, sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows, a platinum ring gleaming on his finger. His expression was calm, almost amused, as though this scene were a performance he'd directed many times before. "Good evening, Clara," he said, his voice smooth as glass. "I see Selina's been keeping you company." Clara stared at him, her body trembling but her eyes steady. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why are you doing this to me?" Vincent leaned against the bars. "Because you never listened. Because you thought the company belonged to you. Because you forgot who made you. Load." He slid his hand through the bars and touched her chin. His grip was cold. "Everything I built is mine, including you." Selina laughed behind him. "You should thank him, Clara. Most women would kill for his attention." Vincent looked at Selina with faint irritation. "Enough." His voice was sharp, precise. Then he turned back to his wife. "You'll sign the documents tomorrow, the ones transferring your shares to Hale Capital. After that, you'll rest. Understand?" Clara shook her head slowly. "I won't." The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Vincent's jaw tightened. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he unlocked the cage door, stepped inside, and grabbed Clara by the arm. The sound of metal scraping against metal echoed through the basement. "Don't test me," he whispered. "You don't want to know what I can do when I'm angry." Clara tried to pull away, but his grip only tightened. Her chair tipped, crashing against the bars. Pain shot up her side. Selina laughed again, the sound bright and cruel. Vincent released her suddenly, as if disgusted by the weakness he saw. He stepped back, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve. "Clean her up," he said to Selina. "We'll record the apology tomorrow." Selina nodded, eyes glittering. "Of course." As Vincent walked away, his reflection rippled across the polished steel. The door closed behind him with a low mechanical hiss. Locks clicked in sequence, one after another, until the world fell quiet again. Only the faint hum of electricity remained. Selina crouched in front of the cage. Her face was inches from Clara's. "You really should smile more," she whispered. "It makes the camera love you." She stood, poured the last of her wine onto the floor, and left. The smell of alcohol lingered long after her heels vanished up the stairs. Clara's breath came in short bursts. The cold from the spilled wine had reached her skin, and she shivered violently. She looked up at the single bulb hanging above, its light flickering with each heartbeat of the generator. For a brief second, she thought it might go out, leaving her in total darkness. She pressed both hands over her stomach. The baby's faint movement steadied her. "It's okay," she whispered. "They can't take everything." A soft click came from the far wall, the camera's focus adjusting. She turned her head and saw the red light blink twice. Someone was watching. Whether friend or enemy, she couldn't tell. But she stared straight into the lens, her eyes clear and defiant. Upstairs, laughter drifted through the vents again. Glasses clinked, music swelled, and the world continued as if nothing was happening below. The bulb flickered once more, casting a strobe of light across the cage. For an instant, the bars looked like lines of fire. Then the generator hummed louder, the light steadied, and the basement returned to its gray stillness. Clara leaned her head back against the bars. Her pulse thudded beneath her palms. She closed her eyes and whispered the only prayer she still remembered. "Let me live long enough to save my child." The red camera light blinked again. Once, twice, then it stayed on. Somewhere unseen, the recording had begun. The first day passed without sound. The second stretched into a blur of hours that refused to move. Time inside the basement was a slow poison. There were no windows, no clocks, no proof that the world outside still existed. The light above Clara Monroe flickered every few minutes, humming softly like a cruel reminder that electricity never slept, even when people did. She counted her breaths to stay sane. 10 in, 10 out, then start again. Her wrists ached from the metal cuffs that had left faint marks on her skin. Her lips were cracked, her hair damp with sweat. The thin blanket on the cot did nothing against the cold that crept through the concrete. Every corner of the room seemed to breathe with her, echoing the slow rhythm of fear. When footsteps came, they were never kind. Sometimes it was the guard delivering food, a tray with dry crackers, a small bottle of water, and a piece of fruit bruised from the fall. He never spoke. Other times it was Selina, wearing perfume strong enough to cover the smell of mold. She would stand at the bars, sip her drink, and whisper little things meant to cut deeper than any knife. "You still believe he loves you?" she once said, her smile a polished lie. "Men like Vincent don't love, they own." Clara said nothing. Silence had become her armor. If she didn't answer, there was less for them to use. But that silence felt heavier with each passing hour, as if it might crush her from the inside. At night, the sounds changed. The pipes groaned. The floorboards above creaked under the weight of footsteps. Sometimes music leaked through the vents, jazz, laughter, the soft chime of glasses. It wasn't the noise that hurt her. It was the normality of it, the idea that life went on as she sat here forgotten. She pressed her palm over her stomach, feeling a faint flutter. The baby moved, a small protest in the darkness. "You're still here," she whispered. "You're stronger than I am." The bulb flickered again. For a moment the light dimmed, and her reflection appeared on the curved metal bars, pale face, hollow eyes, hair clinging to her forehead. She barely recognized herself. Somewhere in her mind, a memory fought to survive. Sunlight over the sea, laughter, her brother's voice calling her name. It vanished as quickly as it came, swallowed by the hum of the generator. Hours later, the lock turned. A different sound this time, slower, cautious. Clara sat up, bracing herself. The door didn't open all the way. A shadow appeared in the crack, small and hesitant. It wasn't Selina. The figure moved closer, the beam of a small flashlight trembling across the floor. "Mrs. Hale," a whisper said, uncertain and quiet. Clara blinked. The voice belonged to a woman, older, familiar somehow. "Who are you?" Clara asked. "Linda," the woman said. "I work in security. Please, don't speak too loud." The flashlight shifted, revealing a kind face lined with worry. Linda's uniform looked oversized, her name badge half broken. "I don't have long," she murmured. They shouldn't know I'm here. Clara gripped the bars. Can you help me? Please. Linda's eyes filled with guilt. I can't open the cage. The locks are coded, but I can do something else. She lifted a small black USB drive from her pocket and showed it to Clara. The cameras record everything. I copied part of it. What they did to you? It's all here. Clara stared at the device, as if it were something sacred. Why? She whispered. Because I used to work for your family, Linda said softly. Before you married him, I owe you that much. The sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway above. Linda froze. I have to go, she said quickly. Stay alive, Mrs. Hale. Someone will see this. Someone will help. The flashlight flicked off, and the darkness swallowed her again. Clara sat in silence, her heart pounding. The USB drive, that tiny piece of plastic, could mean freedom. She didn't dare hope yet. Hope was dangerous. Hope got you punished. The hours that followed blurred again. The food came untouched. The air grew colder. She lost count of time until she heard the storm outside. Rain hit the roof in steady waves. She lifted her face toward the faint sound, imagining what rain felt like on skin. It had been weeks since she felt anything real. Do you hear that? She whispered to the child within her. That's the world. It's still there. The baby moved again, soft and steady. It was the only answer she needed. Later, she tried to sleep. Her dreams came in fragments. Bright light, the ocean, a man's voice calling her name. When she woke, the light was gone, replaced by the dull gray of the bulb. She touched the marks on her wrists, the bruises fading into pale blue shadows. Her reflection stared back from the metal. This time, she didn't look away. The camera in the corner blinked once. She had almost forgotten it was there. A small red dot pulsed like a heartbeat, recording silently. She didn't know who might see it, or when, but the thought of it gave her something she hadn't felt in days. She looked straight into the lens and whispered, "Don't forget me." The air vent rattled. A low hum rose through the pipes, followed by faint voices. Vincent's laughter drifted down, soft and casual, as if the world above were untouched by cruelty. The sound made her stomach twist. She pressed her hands to her ears until it faded. When she lowered them, she realized how quiet it was again. The bulb buzzed faintly. The rain outside slowed. The only thing moving was that tiny red light in the corner, blinking, steady, alive. Clara pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She closed her eyes and began to count again. 10 breaths in, 10 breaths out. It was the only rhythm she could control. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the exhaustion and pain, a small piece of her refused to die. The light flickered one last time, painting the bars in brief flashes of gold. Then everything settled into stillness. The camera kept recording. The morning light never reached the basement. It only lived upstairs, where Vincent Hale and Selina Voss walked through rooms lined with glass and silver, their reflections multiplying like illusions. Clara could hear them through the vents sometimes, their laughter cutting through the air like knives. She stopped trying to imagine sunlight. It belonged to them now. Upstairs, in the office that overlooked the city, Vincent poured coffee into 2 porcelain cups. His tone was calm, almost pleasant, as if discussing a business merger instead of the ruin of another human being. "She'll sign soon," he said, stirring sugar with slow precision. "Everyone breaks eventually." Selina sat on the edge of his desk, legs crossed, watching him with a smirk. "You said that last week, yet she's still breathing." Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly. "She's stubborn, it runs in her family, but she's also rational. Once she realizes I hold everything, she'll stop pretending to fight." Selina leaned closer. "And when she does? What happens then?" He looked up, his gray eyes empty of warmth. "Then she disappears, quietly." The words hung in the air like smoke. Selina smiled, a slow, satisfied curve of lips. "That's cold, even for you." "It's efficient," Vincent replied. "I built Hale Capital on efficiency. Emotions are for amateurs." "Yes." Selina stood and walked toward the wide window, where the city glowed beneath a pale sky. "You're lucky I like efficiency," she said softly. Her reflection met his in the glass, 2 predators sharing the same view. Down below, in the cage, Clara listened to faint echoes through the vent. She couldn't make out every word, but she caught enough. The phrases drifted down, each one a blade cutting deeper. "Sign soon," "disappears," "efficiency." She pressed her palms against her ears, but the words lived in her mind now. They wouldn't leave. Her breath came fast. The air felt thinner, heavier. She looked at the camera in the corner, its red light blinking. It watched her like an unblinking eye. For the first time, she spoke to it. "You're the only witness," she whispered. "If you're really there, don't forget." The metal beneath her hands was cold. The chill crept up her arms, into her chest. Her heartbeat slowed. She thought of the sea she hadn't seen in years, of the sand that used to cling to her feet as a child. Somewhere beyond the walls, she imagined waves crashing, louder, louder, until they drowned the sound of her fear. Hours later, Selena came down again. She was in a different dress, white this time, almost angelic. She carried a folder and a tablet, her steps echoing. "Good news," she said cheerfully. "Vincent wants to make a deal. Sign these papers and you'll go free." "No." Clara looked at her through the bars. "What kind of freedom?" she asked. Selena's smile faltered for a second, then she regained it. "The kind that doesn't involve lawyers or the press. Just your signature and silence." Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "You think I believe you?" Selena tilted her head. "I don't care if you do, but if you don't sign, the next time Vincent loses patience, I won't stop him. Lad." She slid the folder through the slot at the bottom of the bars and dropped a pen beside it. "I'll give you until tomorrow," she said, tapping her nails against the steel. "After that, I'll assume you've made your choice." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and one more thing. You should have seen his face when he read your old company's reports. So naive. You really trusted people too easily." Her laughter filled the room before fading up the stairs. Clara didn't move. She stared at the folder on the floor. Her vision blurred, but not from tears. Something in her had gone quiet, the kind of silence that isn't peace, but surrender. She reached for the papers slowly, her fingers trembling. The first page bore the Hale Capital logo, neat and flawless. Beneath it, her name, already typed in, waiting for a signature. For a long time she just stared. Then she tore the first page in half. The sound was small but sharp, echoing like a gunshot. Somewhere above, the jazz music stopped. She didn't care. If this was rebellion, it would be her last. That night, the camera caught her sitting upright in the cage, eyes fixed on the darkness. The footage would later show no movement, just a woman breathing, holding on to what little dignity she had left. In the security room, Linda Parker watched the feed. Her hands shook as she slipped another USB into her pocket. The footage was clear now, everything from the first splash of wine to Vincent's threats. It was more than evidence. It was truth frozen in pixels. She knew keeping it meant risking her job, maybe her life, but she couldn't erase it. Not this time. She waited until the guards changed shifts. Then she left the security room, walking quickly down the corridor toward the staff exit. The rain outside covered the sound of her steps. She pulled her hood up and glanced back once at the mansion's glowing windows. Each one looked like an eye that might open at any second. At the parking lot, she took out her phone. The USB drive felt heavy in her palm. She hesitated, then typed a message. To Dr. Helena Ruiz. Subject: urgent. She's alive. Watch this. She attached the file and hit send. Inside the hospital several miles away, Helena was preparing to leave for the night when her phone vibrated. She frowned at the unknown sender. Curiosity turned into disbelief as she opened the attachment. The video began with static, then a flicker of movement. Clara's face, bruised and pale, staring at the camera. The sight rooted her to the spot. Helena replayed the clip twice, her pulse racing faster each time. She reached for her phone, scrolling to a familiar contact. Her voice trembled as she spoke into the receiver. "Ethan, it's Helena. You need to come home. It's about Clara." "Iment." The video kept playing on her screen, the red light blinking in the corner. In that tiny reflection, hope had finally begun to move. The rain had not stopped since morning. It swept through the city in gray sheets, blurring lights and streets, until everything looked like a memory. Ethan Monroe's car sliced through the storm, tires cutting through shallow rivers of water. His hands were tight on the wheel. The voice message from Dr. Helena Ruiz played again in his mind. "She's alive, Ethan. Clara's alive." He didn't remember the drive, only the sound of rain and his own heartbeat. When he reached the outskirts of town, the familiar iron gates of Hale Manor appeared through the downpour. Lightning flashed, illuminating the carved initials on the gate, VH. The symbol that once meant wealth now looked like a wound. Ethan stepped out of the car, rain drenching his coat instantly. He looked up at the mansion, its windows glowing faintly through the storm. He had been here before, as a guest, a brother proud of his sister's new life. Tonight, he came as a man who had seen the truth on a screen. He carried a folder under his arm, sealed with the federal warrant that gave him the right to enter. 2 plainclothes officers followed close behind. Their flashlights cut narrow tunnels through the rain. "You're sure she's here?" one asked. Ethan didn't answer. He knew. Every instinct told him that his sister was somewhere inside, breathing the same air as her captor. They approached the side entrance where deliveries were made. The lock was old. One officer picked it quickly, and the door creaked open. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. Only the hum of electricity filled the halls. They moved through corridors lined with portraits, Vincent's ancestors staring down like silent judges. Each painting seemed to watch them pass. "Basement's this way," Ethan said. His voice was low but firm. He remembered the layout from years ago. A right turn after the kitchen, then a staircase hidden behind a steel door. When they reached it, one of the officers tested the handle. Locked. Ethan pulled out the warrant, and the key that Helena had sent, one Linda Parker had smuggled out. It fit perfectly. The door opened with a groan that echoed through the hall. A rush of cold air hit them. The smell of metal and mildew rose from below. Ethan took the lead, his flashlight trembling slightly as it cut through the dark. Each step down felt heavier, as though the house itself resisted him. "Clara?" he called softly. No answer. Only the steady hum of the generator. At the bottom of the stairs, they found it, a room of concrete and steel. In the center stood the cage, its bars glinting under the flashlight. For a moment, Ethan froze. The sight was too real, too exact, just like in the video. Then movement, a faint shift in the shadows. Clara was there, curled against the bars, her face pale under the flickering bulb. Her dress was torn, soaked in stains of wine and time. She lifted her head slowly, as if waking from a long nightmare. Her lips parted. "Ethan?" He dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, spinning light over the walls. He knelt beside the cage, gripping the bars. "Clara, it's me. I'm here." Tears welled in her eyes, but no sound came out. She reached toward him, her hand trembling in the cold air. Their fingers almost touched through the gap. Ethan turned to the officers. "Cut this open." One drew a small electric saw from his bag. Sparks flew as the blade bit into the lock. The sound was deafening, but Clara didn't flinch. She just watched, eyes wide, disbelieving. When the final bolt snapped, the door swung open with a screech. Ethan stepped inside and knelt before her. For a moment he couldn't speak. Words were too small for what he saw. Her skin was bruised, her voice barely a whisper. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I've got you." "No." She shook her head weakly. "No one's safe here." He looked around. The walls were lined with cameras, red lights still blinking. He motioned to the officers. "Kill the power. Take everything. I want every second of footage." One officer nodded, pulling cords from the machines. The screens went dark one by one, leaving only the sound of rain hammering against the vents above. Ethan helped Clara to her feet. She stumbled once, her knees buckling, and he caught her. Her body felt weightless, as if it might disappear if he loosened his grip. "Easy," he whispered. "I've got you." When they reached the stairs, she stopped, looking back at the cage. For a moment, her reflection shimmered on the steel. "I thought I'd die there," she murmured. "Not tonight," he said. They climbed slowly. The officers led the way, scanning every corner with their flashlights. Outside, the storm still raged, but to Ethan it sounded like applause, chaotic, relentless, alive. When they reached the foyer, paramedics were already waiting, alerted by Helena's call. The moment the doors opened, cold night air rushed in. Clara gasped as if breathing for the first time. The rain touched her face, washing away the dust and fear. She looked at her brother, her lips trembling. "I can hear the rain," she said softly. He smiled, but his eyes were wet. "Let it remind you you're still here." The paramedics guided her onto the stretcher. wrapping a blanket around her. She didn't resist. Her eyes drifted toward the mansion as they rolled her toward the ambulance. Through the open doorway, she could still see the staircase leading down into the dark. The red and blue lights of the ambulance flickered against the walls, turning the marble floor into a sea of color. As the back doors closed, Ethan stood in the rain, watching. The officers secured the perimeter, speaking into radios. The storm swallowed every sound except the rhythmic wail of the siren starting up. He turned once more toward the mansion. Through the open basement door, the empty cage glimmered faintly in the flashlight's beam. The red reflection of the ambulance lights danced across the steel bars, making them look like they were burning. Ethan took a slow breath. Somewhere behind him, a medic shouted that the patient's pulse was weak but stable. He didn't move. He kept his eyes on the cage until the lights faded, and the sound of the siren disappeared into the distance. Then the rain fell harder, erasing the footprints on the stone. The steady beep of a monitor filled the hospital room. Each sound marked another second. Clara Monroe had survived. The walls were soft white, but the light was too bright, too clean, like it belonged to another world. She lay motionless, her face pale beneath the oxygen tube. Every breath sounded like it had to fight its way out of her chest. Dr. Helena Ruiz adjusted the IV line, her movements quiet and precise. "Blood pressure is stabilizing," she murmured to the nurse beside her. "Keep her warm." Her body still in shock. Clara's eyelids fluttered once, but she didn't wake. Helena brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. The bruises along her neck were fading, but the memory of them would not. Ethan stood by the window, coat still damp from the rain, eyes fixed on the city lights outside. He had not slept since the night he brought his sister here. The image of the cage followed him everywhere. When he closed his eyes, he could still hear the sound of metal breaking, the sharp intake of Clara's first breath in freedom. Helena approached quietly, holding a thin folder. "There's something you need to see." He turned. "What is it?" She opened the folder on the desk. Inside were copies of medical forms, prenatal records, consent signatures, prescription lists. "These are Clara's hospital records," she said. "But look here." She pointed to the signature line at the bottom of a form. The name written there was Vincent Hale. "He signed for changes in her medication 3 times, Helena explained. "Sedatives, increased dosages, and a restriction order preventing outside consultation. None of it was authorized by Clara herself." Ethan stared at the paper, his jaw tightening. He controlled her treatment. Helena nodded. He wanted her docile. The sedatives he approved would cause dizziness, confusion, emotional numbness. "It's not just abuse, Ethan. It's calculated manipulation." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. He drugged her while pretending to protect her. "And there's more," Helena said, sliding another file across the desk. "Financial records. Linda Parker gave me access to part of the household account she managed before being moved to security. There are wire transfers from Hale Capital to a shell company called Silverline Holdings. The beneficiary matches Clara's maiden name." Ethan frowned. "He used her identity?" "Yes. He created a phantom company under her name, then transferred her design firm's assets through it. On paper, it looks like she willingly handed everything over." Helena paused. "He built an empire from her inheritance." For a long moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of machines. Ethan looked down at the papers, lines of numbers, and false signatures forming the anatomy of betrayal. His voice was low when he spoke. He wanted to erase her completely. Personally, legally, financially. Helena met his eyes. "That's not all." From her bag, she took a flash drive and plugged it into the hospital's laptop. The screen flickered to life. A paused video frame appeared. The basement, the cage, the faint shimmer of a woman's outline under a single bulb. "This is the full recording," she said softly. "Linda recovered it from the security system. It's longer than the one I sent you." Ethan sat down slowly. "Play it." "You." The video began with static, then sound. Vincent's voice echoed through the speakers, calm and chilling. "You'll sign tomorrow, or I'll make sure you never see daylight again." Clara's voice, weak but clear, answered. "You can't kill what you already broke." Ethan's hands tightened into fists. He watched, silent, as Vincent shoved her back against the bars. The sound of metal rang through the room, followed by Selena's laughter. Helena turned away, her eyes wet. When the video ended, Ethan remained still, staring at the frozen frame of his sister crouched on the floor. The silence in the hospital room felt too large, too heavy. Helena whispered, "This needs to go to the authorities." "It will," he said, "but not just yet. If we go public too soon, he'll bury everything. He has lawyers, money, influence. We need a full chain of proof." Helena hesitated. "You're talking about an investigation." "I'm talking about justice," Ethan replied. He stood, pacing once before, stopping near Clara's bed. The light from the monitor painted his face in pale blue. He took her freedom, her company, her name. He almost took her life. "I won't let him keep anything." He looked at his sister. She lay still, fragile yet alive, her fingers twitching slightly against the sheets. For a fleeting second, her lips moved, a whisper formed, but never became a word. Ethan leaned closer. The monitor beeped faster. "She's trying to say something," Helena murmured. Clara's voice barely existed. "Baby," she breathed. "Protect baby." Ethan closed his eyes. "I will," he said quietly. "I promise." Helena checked the vitals again. "The baby's heartbeat is weak, but steady. She's holding on." Ethan turned back to the desk, where the documents and the flash drive lay side by side. Paper and plastic, fragile things, yet inside them was the weight of a crime too large to ignore. He gathered them carefully, placing each into his briefcase. The rain outside had stopped, but thunder still rumbled in the distance. Helena said softly, "What will you do now?" He closed the case and met her gaze. "Finish what he started." She frowned. I mean, he interrupted. "I'm going to uncover everything he's hidden, every forged document, every transfer, every lie." Helena nodded slowly. "Then you'll need allies. You can't fight this alone." "Oh, I won't be alone," he said. He looked once more at Clara, her chest rising and falling with fragile rhythm. "She's already fighting. I just have to match her strength." The room fell silent again. Outside the window, dawn began to break, faint light slipping through the clouds. It touched the side of Clara's bed, illuminating her hand resting atop the blanket. Ethan stood beside her, the folder in one hand, the flash drive glinting in the other. The soft mechanical beeping filled the space between them, a steady pulse of life and defiance. He looked at Helena. His voice was quiet but firm. "We bring everything to light." The city looked peaceful from above, its skyline glittering under the night haze. But inside Ethan Monroe's office, peace had no meaning. The blinds were half-drawn, shadows cutting through the room like stripes. On his desk lay the open laptop, the flash drive beside a half-empty cup of coffee. Every document, every number on the screen was a thread in a web that reached farther than he imagined. A knock came at the door. Ethan didn't look up. "Come in!" And the man who entered carried the quiet authority of someone used to secrets. Agent Marcus Doyle set his ID on the table without a word. The gold emblem of the Federal Bureau of Investigation caught the lamplight. "You've got something," Marcus said, pulling a chair closer. "I wouldn't be here otherwise." Ethan slid the folder across the desk. "Corporate fraud, identity theft, and attempted murder, if you count what he did to my sister." "Nah." Marcus flipped through the documents, scanning quickly. "Vincent Hale," he murmured. "Clean on paper, donor to half the city, board member of 3 charities, but Silverline Holdings, that's interesting." "It's fake," Ethan said. "Shell company under Clara's maiden name. He moved her assets through it and buried the trail behind offshore accounts. He's been doing it for months." Marcus nodded slowly. "And you have proof?" Ethan tapped the flash drive. "Video from his private residence, and transaction records traced by Dr. Helena Ruiz. They connect directly to Hale Capital." The agent leaned back. "You know what you're asking, right? A federal probe into one of the city's biggest financiers. He has friends everywhere." "I don't care who his friends are," Ethan said. "I care about justice." Marcus studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You sound like I used to, before politics got louder than truth." He pocketed the flash drive carefully. "We'll start quiet. My team will verify the data, pull bank records, and freeze transfers if we confirm fraud. You stay in the background." "I can't stay in the background," Ethan said. "He'll bury more evidence if he senses a whisper of this." Marcus nodded once. "Then you move like a shadow. No calls, no paper trails. Leave the rest to me." As the agent left, Ethan looked out the window. The city lights blurred through the glass, shimmering like reflections in deep water. He thought of Clara lying in the hospital bed, her breathing steady but fragile. Every light in the skyline felt like a promise he had to keep. At the hospital, Dr. Helena Ruiz reviewed the latest lab results. Clara's condition was improving slowly. She was awake now, speaking in short sentences, though her voice remained weak. "Has he been caught?" she had asked earlier, her eyes distant. Helena had answered gently, "Not yet, but soon." When Helena returned to her office, she found Linda Parker waiting in the corner, her uniform replaced with civilian clothes. The woman's hands were clasped tightly around her bag. "I had to leave," Linda said quietly. "They started asking questions at the estate. I think Selena suspects something." Helena gestured for her to sit. "Did you bring what we talked about?" Linda nodded and pulled a small hard drive from her bag. "The backup from Hale Capital's internal server. It's encrypted, but I copied everything before I left." Helena exhaled with relief. "You did the right thing." Linda's eyes were tired. "Right doesn't always feel safe." I know," Helena said softly. "But this will help them." Linda nodded, standing to leave. "Tell your friend, the lawyer, that I don't regret it. Just make sure she's safe." "I promise," Helena said. When Linda was gone, Helena sent a coded message to Ethan. "Received backup. Full copy. Moving to secure channel." She encrypted the drive and hid it inside a locked cabinet. Outside, thunder rolled over the city like distant drums. Across town, in a high-rise apartment draped in silk and glass, Selena Voss poured herself another drink. Her reflection in the window trembled with each lightning flash. She couldn't sleep. For 3 nights, she'd heard whispers in the company halls, rumors about missing data, about Hale Capital being audited. She turned on her phone. The latest message from Vincent blinked on the screen. "Calm down. Everything's under control." But she didn't believe it. Control was an illusion. She'd seen the look in his eyes when he talked about the video, the rage, the fear. If the footage ever surfaced, both of them would go down. She opened her laptop, typed her password, and accessed the remote server. Her fingers hovered over the delete key. Then she hesitated. Somewhere inside her, a flicker of survival whispered that maybe, just maybe, she should keep a copy. If things went wrong, leverage could save her. The apartment door buzzed suddenly. Selena jumped, her glass spilling wine across the white carpet. She stared at the intercom, breath quick. The voice from the speaker said, "Delivery for Miss Voss." She didn't answer. Her heart pounded until the footsteps retreated. The silence afterward felt louder than any threat. She exhaled shakily and turned back to the screen. The progress bar showed deleting files. 12%. She shut the laptop with trembling hands, unable to watch. Midnight bled into dawn. In Ethan's office, the lights were still on. The phone buzzed once, Marcus's coded signal. Ethan answered immediately. "We've confirmed the accounts," Marcus said. "Silverline Holdings is real, but the owner of record isn't your sister. It's Vincent Hale. He forged the documents." Ethan's pulse quickened. "That's enough to open a case." "Almost," Marcus said. "We need the trigger, something public, something undeniable." Ethan thought for a moment. Then he looked at the open newspaper on his desk. A headline announced an upcoming Hale Capital charity gala. "Tomorrow night, the future of innovation." He smiled faintly. "I think I know where to start." That evening, cameras were being set up in the ballroom of the Hale Tower. Golden curtains hung from the ceiling, crystal chandeliers polished to perfection. Guests would arrive in designer suits and evening gowns, never guessing what was waiting to surface. In a small office behind the stage, a laptop hummed quietly. Inside, the final copy of the footage rested on a secured drive, ready for upload. The city's skyline shimmered through the glass like a mirror of secrets. Somewhere far below, a woman in a hospital bed turned in her sleep, her heartbeat sinking with the storm. And high above, Ethan watched the lights from his car, waiting for night to fall. The chandeliers inside Hale Tower shimmered like captured stars. The ballroom glittered with gold curtains and silver trays, laughter mingling with the soft hum of jazz. Reporters, investors, and city officials filled the room, their glasses raised toward the stage where Vincent Hale stood beneath a white spotlight. His smile looked effortless. It always had. "Tonight," he said smoothly, "we celebrate innovation, trust, and the vision that built Hale Capital." Applause rippled through the crowd. Selena Voss, radiant in a crimson gown, smiled from the front row, every gesture rehearsed. Cameras flashed, catching perfection in motion. In the control room behind the stage, a technician adjusted the presentation feed. The laptop on the desk showed the event's opening logo. Then the screen flickered once, as if touched by static. He frowned, checking the signal. Unnoticed by him, a second window opened quietly, a file labeled Evidence, Clara, M. Back on stage, Vincent continued. "Our success is built not only on technology, but on integrity." The screen behind him came alive. The Hale Capital logo vanished. In its place appeared a dimly lit basement. The room fell silent. The music cut mid-note. At first, the audience thought it was part of the presentation, but then came the sound of a voice. Vincent's voice. "You'll sign tomorrow, or you'll never see daylight again." The words echoed through the speakers. The color drained from Selena's face. Vincent froze, his body stiffening as the crowd turned toward the screen. There, in full clarity, was Clara Monroe, bruised, trembling, clutching her stomach as he towered over her. A woman in the front row gasped. Someone else dropped a glass. The video played on, showing Selena laughing as she poured wine on the prisoner's dress. Every second twisted the silence tighter. "Turn it off," Vincent hissed, moving toward the control booth. But the technician was already backing away, eyes wide. "It's not me, sir. It's running from an external source." Selena's voice cracked. "Vincent, do something." The footage continued mercilessly. The sound of Clara's whisper filled the ballroom. "You can't kill what you already broke." The image froze on her face, pale but defiant. Then the words, "Property of Hale Capital Internal Security Feed," appeared in the corner. The audience erupted. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Cameras turned from Vincent to the screen, flashing like lightning. "Is this real? Mr. Hale, is that your wife? Who recorded this?" Selena tried to push through the crowd, her composure fracturing. "It's fake!" she shouted. "Deep fake! Lies!" But no one believed her. The timestamp in the corner glowed clear and sharp. The corporate logo matched every authentic Hale Capital feed ever seen. Vincent reached the microphone, trying to steady his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, there's been a mistake. This is a private matter." The crowd's roar swallowed his words. Security guards moved toward the stage, not to protect him, but to control the chaos. Flashlights from news crews cut across his face. Somewhere near the back, Maya Lee, her camera live, whispered into her mic. "This is happening now at the Hale Tower Gala. The footage appears authentic." Selena grabbed Vincent's arm. "We have to go," she hissed. "Now, But it was too late. The storm had already broken. By morning, the video had spread across every major network. Streaming platforms replayed it endlessly. Hashtags flooded social media. The world had seen the cage, the bruises, the laughter. There was no unseeing it. At the hospital, Clara woke to the sound of voices in the corridor. The TV on the wall flickered with live coverage from the Hale Tower. Reporters stood outside the building, microphones raised, their faces pale beneath harsh light. A headline ran across the screen. "Hale Empire in Crisis. Abuse allegations emerge." Helena entered quietly. "You shouldn't watch that yet," she said. Clara shook her head. "I have to." The footage replayed again, muted this time. Vincent's image froze mid-sentence, eyes cold and distant. "It's real," Clara whispered. "The world finally sees." Helena hesitated. Ethan wanted to wait before going public, but once the feed leaked from the tower, there was no stopping it. The timing? It was perfect. "Or fate," Clara said softly. She sat up slowly, one hand pressed to her belly. The pain was still there, but so was something else, strength. He wanted power. Now he'll have to face the truth. Helena placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to face the media, not yet." "I do," Clara replied. "If I stay silent now, everything I endured becomes just another story." She stood, her reflection in the hospital window faint but steady. The blue sky outside was clearing after days of rain. "I'll speak. On my terms." That afternoon, in a modest press room filled beyond capacity, Clara Monroe appeared again before the world. She wore the same light blue dress from the video. Cameras flashed as she took the podium, her posture straight, her gaze calm. "My name is Clara Monroe," she said. "Some of you saw what happened to me. Some of you still doubt it. I'm not here to convince anyone. I'm here to exist." A murmur rippled through the room. "I was told to be quiet," she continued. "I was told my silence would keep me safe. But silence only keeps monsters comfortable." Her words carried no anger, only clarity. "This is not about revenge. It's about truth. Every woman who has been told to hide her pain deserves light. This is mine." Reporters began to clap, not out of etiquette but emotion. Helena, standing beside Ethan at the back, felt her throat tighten. Ethan's eyes stayed on his sister, pride and sorrow, mixing in equal measure. Clara's final words cut through the noise. "If you ever find yourself trapped in darkness, remember this: someone will see you." The camera zoomed in as she stepped back from the microphone. The crowd's applause thundered, echoing far beyond the walls of the room. Across the city, Vincent Hale and Selena Voss watched the live broadcast from their penthouse, their faces reflected in the television screen, pale and hollow. The sound of Clara's voice filled the room like judgment. Vincent turned off the TV, his hand shaking. "It's not over," he muttered. But for the first time, even he didn't believe it. Outside, the city lights glowed brighter, as if the truth itself had caught fire. The morning broke with gray light and the low hum of helicopters circling above the city. It was a sound New Yorkers usually ignored, but not today. Outside Hale Capital's glass tower, news vans lined the street. Reporters stood ready, earpieces crackling, cameras pointed toward the building where the empire of Vincent Hale was beginning to collapse. Inside the tower, the usual rhythm of business had stopped. Phones rang unanswered. Employees gathered in small clusters, whispering. The air smelled of tension and fear. The elevator chimed, and Vincent stepped out onto the main floor in a dark suit, jaw tight, expression fixed. He had barely slept. The night before had been a blur of phone calls, lawyers, and unanswered questions. "Keep the market steady," he told his assistant, voice sharp. "Announce an internal audit. We'll deny everything." The assistant nodded, trembling slightly. "Sir, the board." "I am the board," Vincent interrupted, striding toward the conference room. "And this company doesn't breathe without my permission." But when he opened the door, everything changed. A line of agents in dark suits stood inside. Their badges gleamed beneath the fluorescent lights. The man in front, tall with calm gray eyes, stepped forward and held up a document. "Vincent Hale," Agent Marcus Doyle said. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. You're under arrest for aggravated assault, unlawful confinement, and financial fraud." For a moment, no one moved. The silence stretched thin. Vincent blinked, his voice low. "You can't be serious." Marcus didn't flinch. "You have the right to remain silent." Vincent turned toward his staff, searching for support, but their eyes had already fallen. Every camera phone in the room lifted at once, recording the fall of a man who had built his image on perfection. "This is a mistake," Vincent said, his voice rising. "I'll have your job for this." "You won't," Marcus replied simply, snapping handcuffs around his wrists. The sound was metallic and final. Flashbulbs erupted as the glass doors opened. Outside, the crowd surged forward. Reporters shouted questions over the rain that had begun to fall again. "Mr. Hale, do you deny the abuse? Is the video authentic? Where is your wife now?" Vincent kept his head high, his expression carved from stone. But the camera flashes didn't care about dignity. They caught every flicker of anger, every shadow of fear. As the agents led him down the steps, one reporter called out, "Do you have anything to say to Clara Monroe?" For a second, Vincent stopped walking, his jaw flexed, eyes narrowing. Then he spoke just loud enough for the microphones to catch. "She'll regret this." The crowd gasped, and the words echoed through the noise as he was pushed into the black SUV. The door slammed shut. The convoy of federal vehicles pulled away, sirens wailing through the wet streets. By noon, the footage of his arrest played on every screen in the country. The man who once lectured about integrity was now being escorted through a storm of cameras. Stock tickers flashed red as Hale Capital shares plummeted. Employees deleted emails. Investors called in panic. In the quiet of her hospital room, Clara watched it unfold on television. She said nothing, but her hand tightened around the blanket. Helena sat beside her, lowering the volume. "It's only beginning," Helena said gently. Clara's eyes stayed on the screen. "I know." The anchor's voice carried on, crisp and clinical. Sources confirmed that the arrest follows the release of verified security footage showing the CEO's involvement in acts of abuse and illegal financial transfers. The FBI has not commented further. Helena glanced at Clara. "Do you feel anything seeing him like that?" Clara's gaze softened. "Relief isn't the right word. It's more like silence after a storm." She looked away from the screen. The rain outside tapped softly against the window. "He used to control every sound in my life. Now, all I hear is the world again." Across town, another storm was breaking. The penthouse at Riverside Heights glowed with floor-to-ceiling windows and soft music playing from invisible speakers. Selena Voss stood by the mirror, wiping away mascara smudges with trembling hands. Her phone rang relentlessly. Unknown numbers, news agencies, former friends. She ignored them all. She poured herself a drink but didn't touch it. On the muted TV, Vincent's arrest replayed in slow motion. The image froze on his face as he was pushed into the car. She set the glass down, her pulse loud in her ears. A knock came at the door. Sharp, insistent. Her heart skipped. "Who is it?" "Federal agents, Miss Voss," a voice replied. "We have a warrant." Her hand tightened around the glass. "You can't just—" The door opened before she finished. Two agents stepped inside. The one in front spoke calmly. "Selena Voss, you are under arrest for aiding and abetting assault, incitement to violence, and conspiracy to conceal evidence." She backed away, shaking her head. "I didn't do anything. He made me—" "You can tell that to the court," the agent said, producing the warrant. "Please turn around." Selena's heels clicked against the marble as she stumbled backward. The cameras outside captured everything. Her pale face, her trembling hands, the way she tried to cover herself from the flashing lights. The world that once adored her image now devoured it. "Please," she whispered. "You don't understand." He promised, but the agents didn't stop. The cuffs clicked shut, echoing through the apartment. They guided her out into the corridor, where a line of reporters waited. "Miss Voss, were you involved? Did you know about the abuse? Are the recordings real?" She tried to speak, but the noise drowned her voice. Her face appeared on a dozen screens, her eyes wide and lost. For the first time, she looked human, not powerful, not beautiful, just afraid. Outside, thunder rolled again, low and distant. The rain blurred the city lights into streaks of white and gold. The convoy carrying Selena disappeared into the traffic, merging with the storm. At sunset, Ethan stood in the hospital corridor, phone to his ear. Marcus's voice came through the line. "Both in custody. No resistance after transport. The Bureau has everything." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Good." He hung up and stepped into Clara's room. She was awake, watching the fading light through the window. The clouds were finally breaking apart. The sky glowed soft orange, fragile and calm. He sat beside her without speaking. They didn't need words. Outside, the city was roaring, the world watching. But here, in this quiet room, it felt like the first moment of stillness after years of noise. Clara whispered, "It's over." Ethan looked at her, his voice quiet. "Almost." The television flickered one last time. On the screen, the headline read, "Vincent Hale and Selena Voss in federal custody." The world held its breath. The courthouse smelled of rain and paper. Outside, a crowd filled the steps, their voices rising and falling in waves. Reporters held umbrellas, microphones raised toward the heavy doors that guarded the most watched trial of the year. The bronze plaque above the entrance read United States District Court, gleaming faintly under the gray sky. Inside, history waited. Clara Monroe sat in the witness room, her hands folded neatly on her lap. The blue dress she wore was simple, modest, the same shade she had worn on the day she spoke to the world. Dr. Helena Ruiz sat beside her, offering quiet presence rather than words. The faint hum of voices filtered through the wall. Lawyers, journalists, spectators. A court officer opened the door. "They're ready for you, ma'am." Clara stood, smoothing her skirt. Her reflection in the small window looked calm, but she could feel her heartbeat pressing against her ribs. She inhaled deeply, then stepped into the corridor. The marble floor echoed beneath her shoes. When she entered the courtroom, every sound seemed to pause. Rows of people turned toward her, reporters, jurors, strangers. Flashbulbs didn't belong here, yet the air still felt electric. She walked to the witness stand as the clerk swore her in. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. "I do." Across the room sat Vincent Hale. His hair was shorter now, his suit wrinkled from weeks in custody. The arrogance that once defined him had turned into something hollow. He didn't look at her. Selina Voss sat beside him, her face pale, eyes rimmed in red. She twisted a tissue in her hands, her movements restless, almost childlike. The prosecutor began. "Mrs. Monroe, can you tell the court what happened in the days leading up to your confinement?" Clara nodded. "He told me I needed rest. He said the world was too loud, that he would keep me safe. But safety became silence, and silence became a cage." A murmur rippled through the audience. The prosecutor let the words settle before asking, "Can you describe the conditions you lived under?" She spoke slowly, choosing each word carefully. "I slept on a cot. There were no windows, only a light that flickered. I was fed once a day, and every night I heard them laughing above me." The prosecutor nodded gently. "When you say them, you're referring to the defendants?" "Yes," Clara said, her voice firm now. "Vincent Hale and Selina Voss." Across the table, Selina's shoulders trembled. Vincent remained motionless. The prosecutor walked to the evidence screen. "Your Honor, the prosecution submits Exhibit 32, the security footage recovered from Hale Capital's private network." The judge nodded. "Proceed." The lights dimmed. The large monitor at the front of the courtroom came to life. The video began with static, then focused on the familiar basement. Gasps echoed through the room as the image of the cage appeared. The sound filled the space. Vincent's calm threat, Selina's laughter, Clara's whisper. The jury watched in silence, their faces frozen. When it ended, the judge's gavel struck once. The sound was sharp, final, order. The prosecutor turned back to Clara. "Mrs. Monroe, was this recording made without your consent?" "Yes." "And were you physically restrained during this time?" "Yes." The lawyer nodded. No further questions. The defense attorney rose. He looked tired, defeated before he began. "Mrs. Monroe, do you hate your husband?" Clara met his gaze. "No." The attorney hesitated. "Then why come forward?" "Because hate isn't justice," she said simply. "Truth is." A low murmur moved through the courtroom again. Even the judge looked momentarily shaken by the clarity of her tone. When Clara stepped down from the stand, her knees felt weak, but her spirit was steady. She walked past Vincent's table. For the first time, he lifted his eyes. They met for a fraction of a second. Two ghosts of what once was love. Neither spoke. Hours later, after closing arguments, the jury filed out. The courtroom waited. Rain tapped against the tall windows, soft but constant. When the door opened again, 12 faces returned, solemn and pale. The foreperson stood. On count 1, unlawful confinement, guilty. On count 2, aggravated assault, guilty. On count 3, corporate fraud and identity theft, guilty. Each word struck like thunder. Vincent stared forward, expression blank. Selina buried her face in her hands, whispering something no one could hear. The judge cleared his throat. This court sentences Vincent Hale to 35 years in federal prison without parole. Selina Voss, you are sentenced to 12 years for conspiracy and incitement. The gavel fell again. Justice is served. The courtroom erupted, half in gasps, half in applause. Reporters rushed toward the doors, sending updates into microphones. The sound blurred into a roar, but inside Clara's mind, everything grew quiet. She looked toward the bench, toward the symbol of law above it. For the first time in years, she felt the weight inside her chest loosen. Ethan was waiting near the aisle. When she reached him, he took her hand. No words needed. Helena stood behind them, tears in her eyes. Marcus Doyle, at the back of the room, gave a small nod. The chain of truth had held. Vincent was led away first. The cuffs clinked softly as he passed. He didn't look at anyone. The cameras outside caught him walking through the courthouse doors, his head bowed under the flash of 100 lights. Selina followed, escorted by 2 officers. Her red lipstick had faded to nothing. When they were gone, the noise began to fade. The crowd thinned. The judge removed his glasses and left the bench. The courtroom emptied until only Clara remained, standing by the window, watching the rain ease. She could see the steps outside through the glass, the crowd waiting, the reporters ready to shout her name. But for a moment, she stayed still, letting herself breathe. The reflection in the glass was no longer the woman from the cage. It was someone new. Ethan touched her shoulder gently. "They're waiting for you." Clara turned toward him. Her eyes were calm. "Let them wait." She stepped forward, the doors opening to the blinding flash of cameras. The noise was deafening, but she didn't flinch. Somewhere above, the clouds broke, and a ray of sunlight spilled across the courthouse steps. She walked into it. The world followed. The air smelled of coffee and rain-soaked earth. Morning sunlight poured through the windows of a small cafe near the lake, washing the walls in shades of gold. The sign outside read Blue Haven, painted by hand in soft white letters. Inside, the world moved slowly. Cups clinked, laughter rose and faded. The peace felt earned. Clara Monroe stood behind the counter, arranging pastries on a tray. A soft melody played from the radio, an old song she remembered from her childhood. She hummed along, the tune rising like breath after long silence. Her hair, once dark and heavy, was tied loosely. The light blue dress she wore had faded slightly from washing, but she loved it more that way. It no longer carried pain, it carried memory. Through the glass, she could see the lake beyond the trees. The surface shimmered with sunlight, unbroken and calm. She exhaled, feeling the rhythm of a life rebuilt one quiet morning at a time. The bell above the door chimed. Ethan entered, his sleeves rolled up, a newspaper tucked under his arm. "You open earlier every week," he said, smiling. Clara laughed softly. "The mornings are easier than the nights used to be." He placed the paper on the counter. The front page showed a small headline, "Hale Capital Assets Auctioned for Victims Fund." Below it, a photograph of Vincent Hale in prison uniform. She glanced at it, then turned the page over. "You don't have to look," Ethan said. "I know," she replied, "but it reminds me that truth works quietly, even in places we never see." Helena arrived a few minutes later, carrying a bouquet of white lilies. "From the hospital garden," she said. "You keep this place smelling better than the world deserves." Clara smiled, taking the flowers. "You saved more than my life, Helena." Helena's eyes softened. "You did that yourself. I only handed you the key." They shared a quiet moment before Linda Parker entered, wiping raindrops from her jacket. She still wore her old security badge on a keychain, a reminder of the night everything began. "Sorry I'm late," she said, breathless. "The bus was slow, and the driver insisted on playing talk radio." "Then you survived another kind of torture," Ethan teased. Laughter filled the room, light and genuine. Linda handed Clara a small envelope. "From the foundation, the last of the settlement. They wanted to thank you again for using it to build this." Clara opened the envelope. Inside was a note written in formal handwriting, "In honor of those who found light after silence." She set it beside the cash register and nodded. "It belongs to all of us." The door opened again, and the morning light shifted. A child's laughter echoed from outside. A little girl toddled in, holding a wooden spoon like a treasure. Her curls bounced as she moved toward the counter. "Careful, Hope," Clara said, bending down to lift her. The girl giggled, wrapping her arms around her mother's neck. Hope's small dress was the color of sunlight, her eyes bright and curious. Ethan leaned closer. "She's grown. She started running yesterday," Clara said proudly. I blinked, and she was halfway to the porch. Helena smiled. "She has your will." Clara kissed her daughter's forehead. "Then the world should be ready." Hope reached for the flowers on the counter, fascinated by the petals. Linda laughed softly. "That one's going to break hearts." Ethan poured coffee for everyone, his movements slow, familiar. The four of them sat together at the corner table, their conversation drifting between stories of the past and the simple details of the morning, the way the sunlight hit the cups, the smell of cinnamon in the air, the warmth that came from knowing they had survived something impossible. Outside, a few customers sat on the patio, unaware of the history that lived within these walls. For them, Blue Haven was just a cafe. For Clara, it was a heartbeat. She looked around, letting the quiet sink in. "Do you ever think about the beginning?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Every time I see a cage in a movie, I think about that night." Helena set her cup down gently. "But now the cage is only a memory. It doesn't hold you anymore." Clara smiled faintly. "That's why I kept it." The others looked at her, puzzled. She gestured toward the far wall. Hanging between two windows was a framed photograph. It showed the old basement, the locket light, the empty cage, the faint reflection of a man standing outside it. But in the photo, sunlight from the doorway illuminated the bars, turning them almost transparent. Linda's eyes widened. "You kept that?" Clara nodded. "It's a reminder, not of the pain, but of what light can do." Hope wriggled out of her mother's arms and toddled to the frame. She pointed at the photo and laughed, a bright, innocent sound that filled the cafe. Ethan smiled. "She doesn't understand what it was." "She doesn't have to," Clara said. "That's the point." The conversation faded into comfortable silence. Outside, the clouds drifted apart, revealing a sky the color of soft blue silk. A breeze passed through the open window, stirring the lilies on the counter. Their scent mixed with the smell of coffee, creating something that felt like home. Helena glanced at her watch. "I should get back to the hospital. New interns today." Ethan stood, folding his newspaper. "I'll walk you out." Linda followed them, pausing at the door. "You coming, Clara?" "In a minute," she said. When the door closed behind them, the cafe fell quiet again. Only the ticking clock and the sound of the lake outside remained. Clara stood by the window, watching the sunlight ripple across the water. Hope sat on the floor, playing with her spoon, babbling to herself in a language only children understood. Clara turned toward the framed photograph one last time. The reflection of the morning light fell across the image, touching the bars just as it had that first night of freedom. She whispered to herself, "It's over." Then she crossed the room, picked up Hope, and carried her to the door. The sunlight met them halfway, warm and steady. She looked down at her daughter, who was squinting at the brightness. "See, my love," she said softly. "The light always finds a way." The bell above the door chimed as they stepped outside, and the cafe filled with golden light.